The first time I saw the truth about the prison, it was written in blue ink on cheap, lined paper. I was standing alone in the small prison library office, the door half closed behind me. The room smelled like old books, dust, and sweat. In my hands was a notebook an inmate had slipped onto my desk like it was nothing special. But inside that notebook was not homework or a story or a letter. It was a map. On one page, there was a list of names. Some were inmates. Some were guards. Some were officers I saw every single day in uniform, laughing near the metal detectors as if nothing was wrong. Next to each name were numbers, dates, and strange notes. Phone. Delivery. Yard pass. Visit switch. Green light. Lines and arrows connected some of the names like spiderwebs. The more I read, the more my stomach turned, because I realized this prison was not really run by the people in charge. It was run by the people on these pages. At the bottom of one list, I saw a name that made my hands go cold. Officer Ethan Cole. My name. Before I could flip to the next page, a shadow fell across the frosted library window. Someone was standing right outside the door, not moving, just watching. The knob began to turn very slowly. And that was the moment I understood. The secret lives of the inmates weren't just hidden from the outside world. They were about to swallow me too. 3 months earlier, I thought prison was simple. You had the bad guys behind bars. You had the good guys in uniform. There was a tall fence, cameras, and rules. I signed up to be one of the good guys because I needed a steady job, a paycheck, and health insurance. I told myself I was helping keep the world safe, and that was enough to make walking into a prison feel like the right thing. On my first day at Redwood State Prison, the front gate slid open with a loud buzz that shook my chest. The air smelled like metal and bleach. A wall of noise hit me all at once. Shouting, doors slamming, keys jangling, radios crackling. I tried to walk like I wasn't scared, like I belonged there. New kid? A deep voice said beside me. I turned and saw Officer Harris. Big guy, gray hair, thick arms, wrinkles at the corners of his eyes, like someone who had laughed a long time ago, but didn't anymore. Yes, sir. Officer Ethan Cole. I said, No, sir, in here, he grunted. Makes me feel old. Just Harris. Rule 1, Cole. Out there you got the law. In here you got balance. Don't mess with the balance. I didn't really know what that meant, but I nodded like I did and followed him deeper into the prison. Harris led me down a long concrete hallway. Cells lined both sides, stacked 2 levels high. Hands reached through the bars, fingers curled like claws. Some inmates yelled for attention. Some laughed. Some just stared with flat, empty eyes that seemed to look right through me. Eyes forward, Harris said quietly. They smell fear. We stopped in front of cell on the bottom tier. Inside, a tall man sat on his bunk reading a book like he was at home in his living room instead of a steel cage. His skin was dark, his hair short and gray at the sides. A tattoo of a crown curled up the side of his neck. He lifted his head slowly when he saw us, and those calm eyes locked onto mine. That's Marcus Jackson, Harris murmured. Been here longer than most of us have been alive. If the yard is a chessboard, he's the one moving the pieces. I frowned. You mean he runs a gang? Harris shrugged. He works things out. Sometimes that means less blood on the floor. Don't be a hero, Cole. Remember that. Marcus closed his book and looked at me. His eyes were calm, almost kind. He gave the tiniest nod, like he was saying hello to a neighbor, not measuring a brand new guard. For some reason, that tiny nod scared me more than all the shouting down the tier. The first week felt almost normal, or at least as normal as prison can feel. I learned the count times. Morning count, afternoon count, night count. You walked the tier, stopped at each cell, made sure everybody was where it was supposed to be. You signed your name on a form. You followed the schedule and tried not to think too hard about the bars between you and them. I watched inmates line up for chow, carrying their plastic trays, arguing over who got extra bread. Some played cards at the metal tables, slapping them down with loud jokes. Some did push-ups until their arms shook. Some just lay on their bunks staring at the ceiling like time itself had pinned them there. On the surface, It looked like any place where people were stuck together and had to pass the time. But little cracks started to show through that surface. I saw a folded piece of paper, what the older guards called a kite, slide from one cell to another under the door, too quick for most eyes to catch. I saw a small bag change hands in the yard when two men bumped shoulders like it was an accident. I saw an inmate with no money on his account eating special store snacks every night, like someone was paying for him from the shadows. When I asked about it, Harris just shook his head. "You see what you're paid to see," he said. "Nothing more. That's how you go home safe." I didn't say anything back, but I started to wonder what I wasn't being paid to see. One afternoon in the yard, I found out what Harris really meant by balance. The yard was full that day. The sun bounced off the razor wire. Inmates played basketball, walked in slow circles, or stood in small groups talking low. I was posted near the far fence with another officer, Jackson, watching the basketball court. Two men suddenly began shouting near the hoop. One was big and bald with a scar down his cheek. The other was skinny with glasses and tattoos crawling up his arms. The ball rolled away as they stepped into each other's faces. Chests puffed, fists ready. Other players stopped. People nearby turned to watch. The air changed. It felt heavier, like the sky was holding its breath. I was sure the fight was about to explode. I put my hand on my radio. "We should break that up," I said. "Wait," Officer Jackson muttered, not taking his eyes off the court. The big guy shoved the skinny one hard. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Then Marcus walked onto the court. He didn't run. He didn't yell. He just walked between them like he was wandering through a park. He put one hand on each man's chest. His lips moved, calm and low. I couldn't hear the words from where I stood, but both men dropped their eyes to the ground. Their shoulders loosened, their fists unclenched. Marcus bent, picked up the basketball, and passed it to a third man waiting at the side. Just like that, the game started again. The crowd turned away like nothing had happened. The storm had gone before it even hit. "What just happened?" I whispered. Jackson shrugged. "The old man said it wasn't time yet." "So it ain't time. That's balance." Right then, I realized there were rules here I didn't know. Rules that weren't written in any officer's manual. 2 weeks later, I was assigned one of the safe posts, the library. Safe sounded good after watching the yard almost blow up, so I didn't complain. The library was smaller than I imagined. 2 rows of shelves, a few metal tables. Old, torn books stacked in an uneven pile in the corner. A glass window looked out into the hallway. Inside the library, one inmate sat behind a small desk, checking out books. He wore glasses and a calm, tired smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "This is David Lee," the sergeant told me. "He's the clerk in here, knows where every book goes. He'll help you with the sign-out sheet." David stood up. "Good afternoon, Officer Cole," he said in a soft voice. "I heard you're new. Welcome to Redwood." Most inmates talked loud, joked, or tried to act tough. David spoke like a teacher. His hands were steady when he stamped the cards in the back of the books. "Thanks," I said. "You've been here long?" He smiled faintly. "Long enough to know that books are better than fights." Over the next few days, I saw how many men came to the library. Big gang members, quiet loners, old men with shaky hands, young guys with restless eyes. Some borrowed crime novels, some borrowed law books. Some just sat at the tables and whispered. David never needed to look at the computer to know where anything was. "Johnson still has that Stephen King book," he'd say. "Miller should return that law book tomorrow." His memory was perfect. "It helps keep the place running," he told me once. I didn't know yet what place he really meant. One night, I went home and tried to forget about prison. I sat on my worn-out couch, ate cheap pizza from a greasy box, and turned on the TV. But every sound reminded me of something inside the walls. The slam of the neighbor's door sounded like a cell door closing. The laugh track on a comedy show felt wrong, like it was a joke from another world where people didn't count heads and check locks. My phone buzzed. It was my sister, Emily, calling from Ohio. She still saw me as the kid who used to fix her bike, not someone walking through steel gates every day. "How's the new job?" she asked, her voice bright. "It's different," I said. I didn't want to scare her. Just a lot of rules. Lots of walking. "You're doing a good thing, Ethan," she said. "You're helping keep bad people off the streets." I hesitated, staring at the dark TV screen. "Yeah," I said quietly. Something like that. When we hung up, I sat there in the quiet living room, the only light coming from a street lamp outside. For the first time, I wondered if bad people and good people were as simple as I believed. I thought about Marcus stopping that fight with a few words, about David's perfect memory, about the kites sliding under doors. It felt like I was standing on the edge of something I couldn't quite see yet. The first real high came on a rainy Tuesday. We had a surprise search. A shakedown, the sergeant called it. Every cell in C Block. No warning. We went door to door, pulling out mattresses, checking under bunks, opening books, shaking shoes, looking for anything that shouldn't be there. Most cells had nothing more than extra food or hidden photos. Some had homemade razors or tiny bags of powder that disappeared into evidence bags. The inmates cursed, complained, and glared, but they knew the drill. It was just another day in prison. Then we got to Marcus Jackson's cell. "Take this one slow," Harris muttered. "I'll stand at the door. You look around." I stepped inside. Marcus sat on his bunk, hands on his knees, eyes calm like always. "Nothing to hide, Officer Cole," he said. "I like a clean room." I didn't answer. I checked his locker. Just folded clothes and a few books. I looked under the mattress. Nothing. I was about to step back when something caught my eye. A small tear in the lining of his pillow. I pressed my fingers in. Something crinkled. "Sir, I have to open this," I said. Marcus's eyes narrowed, but he didn't move. "Do what you need to do." I cut the pillow. A thin stack of small folded papers slid out and fell onto the bunk. Each one was a tiny rectangle. On the top one, I could see a name and a number. It looked like a ledger. Before I could pick it up, Harris's hand came down fast. He scooped up the stack and stuffed it into his vest pocket. "That's enough, Cole," he said. His voice was calm, but his eyes were hard. "Pillow's contraband now. Write it up as damaged property." "But those papers," I started. "Damaged property," he said again, louder. Marcus watched us, face unreadable. On the walk back to the office, my heart was pounding. What was on those papers? I asked. Harris didn't look at me. "You're new. You still think everything needs to be fixed. It doesn't. Some things just need to be managed. So you're just going to ignore it?" "I'm going to do my job so I can go home and see my grandkids," he snapped. "Do yourself a favor, Cole. Learn which fires you put out and which ones you let burn low." That night, on my locker, I found a note. No name. Just 3 words, written in sharp, neat handwriting. "Stop searching alone." I slept badly after that. From then on, I started seeing the prison with different eyes. I noticed that some inmates never waited in line. Someone always held their spot. Some men always had batteries for their radios, even though they had no money in their accounts. I saw the same faces at every legal visit, at every phone booth, in every quiet corner. The same hands passing folded paper. The same nods that meant more than any words. There was a second world here, right in front of me, but just out of focus. One evening, I was back in the library for night shift. The prison was quieter then. The day noise faded away. You could hear the buzz of the lights, the hum of the vending machines, the distant clang of a gate closing somewhere down the hall. Only a few inmates were in the library. Most had already gone back to their cells. David was at his desk, closing out the log. The sergeant called on the radio, saying we were almost done. "Officer Cole," David said suddenly, "can I ask you something?" "Sure," I said, still looking at the sign-out sheet. "Do you like this job?" he asked. The question surprised me. "It's a job," I said. "It pays the bills." "That's not an answer," he said with a small smile. "You walk like someone who's still deciding if he belongs here." I felt a small flash of anger. "Be careful, Lee." He raised his hands. No disrespect, just an observation. This place changes people. Guards, too. Some bend, some break, some pretend they don't see anything so they can sleep at night. He paused, eyes a little sad. And some can't pretend anymore. His words hit me harder than I wanted to admit. What are you trying to say? I asked. David studied me for a moment, then glanced at the glass window that looked into the hallway. No one was there. The prison sounded far away. Officer Cole, he said softly, do you want to know how this prison really works? My mouth went dry. What do you mean? There are 2 prisons inside these walls, he said. The one they show in the reports, and the one that runs underneath it. You've seen pieces. The kites, the little trades, the fights that don't happen because someone says no. That's not random. That's structure. That's gangs, I said. We know about the gangs. He shook his head. No, gangs are loud. This is quiet. Gangs come and go. This has been here longer than most officers. It's like a second government. It keeps things moving. It makes money. It keeps people alive. And sometimes it decides who doesn't stay alive. I stared at him. How do you know all this? He gave a tired smile. Because, Officer Cole, I used to work with numbers on the outside. Money, accounts, records. That doesn't stop when you go to prison. People like me keep track of things. What kind of things? He stood up slowly. Come with me? He walked to the small office at the back of the library, the same one where I would later stand with a notebook in my hands. I followed him, my radio heavy on my belt, my hand itching to reach for it. The office was cramped. 1 desk, 1 chair, a metal cabinet. David shut the door halfway, not all the way, but enough that the hallway seemed far away. I shouldn't be showing you this, he said quietly. But if I don't, someone else will decide what happens to you, and they may not be as kind. He reached into the cabinet, behind a stack of old forms, and pulled out a thin, worn notebook. The cover was bent. The edges were frayed. It looked like any other jailhouse journal. He placed it in my hands. This, he said, is the part of Redwood that no one writes down in their reports. The secret life. The deals, the debts, the favors. Who owes who pays who can make a phone call happen, who can make one disappear. I opened it. Lines of names, inmate numbers, dates, tiny notes, move to C block, extra hour in the yard, visit extension, guard okay. Some names were crossed out. Some had circles around them. And there already I saw Marcus's name in neat, careful letters. This is all you? I whispered. It's not mine, David said. I'm just the one who writes it. It belongs to the people who really run this place. Marcus is one of them. There are others. The committee, they call it, they keep the balance. They keep the money flowing. And some guards, he paused. Some guards help. For cash. For safety. For favors. I turned a page and saw a list of officer names. Harris. Jackson. Others I had only seen in the break room. Numbers were written next to them. Small and regular. Weekly. Monthly. They weren't salaries. They were payments. My heart hammered. This is bribery, I said. This is everything. Why are you showing me this? Because you're already on their radar, David said. You found Marcus's pillow. You ask questions. You look at the wrong places for too long. That makes people nervous. How do you know about the pillow? I asked. He gave a sad little laugh. Officer Cole, nothing that happens in this place stays secret. Not for long. I flipped to the last page. That's when I saw it. Officer Ethan Cole. There was no number next to my name yet, just a blank space. It means, David said quietly, they haven't decided what you're going to be. I stared at that empty space. It felt like a hole opening under my feet. Suddenly, a shadow moved across the frosted glass of the office door. Someone was standing outside. The knob turned, slow and steady. The door creaked open, just a few inches. In the gap, I saw a familiar face. Marcus Jackson. He stepped into the doorway, his eyes moving from the notebook in my hands to my face. Behind him, the library was empty. The hallway beyond was quiet. No other officers in sight. "Evening, Officer Cole," Marcus said softly. "I see you found the real rule book." My grip tightened on the notebook. The room felt smaller, the air thinner. My radio sat heavy on my belt, but my hand didn't move. Because for the first time since I walked into Redwood State Prison, I understood something. This wasn't just a job anymore. It was a choice. The lights flickered once, then twice. Somewhere down the hall, a distant alarm chirped, then cut off. David stood very still beside the desk, saying nothing. Marcus took one slow step into the office. "We should talk," he said, "before someone else decides your future for you." And as the door clicked shut behind him, I realized I might already be in too deep to walk away. For a few seconds, nobody spoke. The air in the little office felt thick, like it was hard to breathe. Marcus stood by the door, one hand resting on the frame, calm like he had just walked into a normal meeting. David stayed by the desk, his eyes on the floor. I stood in the middle, holding the notebook that had my name inside it. "So," Marcus said softly, "you've been doing your homework, Officer Cole." I tried to sound strong, but my voice came out tight. "This is all illegal. Bribes. Favors. You're running a whole system in here." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "And what do you think this place is, officer? A school? A church? This is prison. There are always systems." "That doesn't make it right." He gave a small smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Right, wrong. Those are outside words. In here, there's only what keeps people breathing and what gets them killed." I felt my fingers tighten around the notebook. "You're paying guards. You're deciding who gets what, who moves where. This isn't balance. It's control. Control is how you keep chaos from swallowing everyone," Marcus said. "You saw what happened on the yard. 2 seconds from a fight. One word from me, and it's over. Why do you think that is?" "Because they're scared of you," I said. He shook his head. "Because they know I keep my deals. That's something your bosses can't always say." David shifted, finally raised his eyes. "Marcus," he said gently, "he's new. You're giving him the whole picture at once." "That's the only way to do it," Marcus replied. "They either see it or they don't." He turned back to me. "You found my pillow. You didn't look away. You came to the library and let Lee show you that book. That means you're not blind. So now you have 2 choices, Officer Cole." He raised 2 fingers. "One, you pretend you never saw that notebook. You keep your head down. You ignore what's in front of you. You go home every night, hug your family, and hope nobody ever writes your name on the wrong page." A 3rd finger lifted. "Two, you decide this makes you a hero. You go running to your sergeant, to internal affairs, to the warden. You tell them what you saw, and then you learn how fast a hero can become an accident in a dark hallway." My mouth went dry. "That sounds like a threat." "It's a warning," Marcus said, voice still calm. "We don't need more enemies. Enemies bleed. Enemies cause noise. Noise brings cameras, inspectors, politicians. We don't like noise." He stepped closer. "If we wanted you gone, officer, we wouldn't be standing here talking. We're standing here because we think you might be useful. Someone like you can keep things smooth. A little look the other way here, a little extra time in the library there. No one gets hurt. You get respect, protection, maybe even a little bonus." My heart pounded. "You want me to help you," I said. "I want you not to fight gravity," Marcus replied. "This place is already falling in one direction. You can go with it and land on your feet, or you can stand stiff and let it break you." David spoke up quietly. "He's not like the others, Marcus." "I know," Marcus said. "That's why I'm trying to talk to him before someone else does." He looked at me one more time. "Think about it, but not for too long. In here, people who stand in the middle of the road get run over from both sides." He turned and opened the office door. The hallway light spilled in. For a second, I almost called after him. I almost said, "No, I'm not doing this." I almost grabbed my radio and shouted for Sergeant, but I didn't. Marcus walked out into the library, hand behind his back, like he was just another inmate getting ready for a head count. The door closed softly behind him. I looked at David. "Why did you let him come in here?" I asked. David sighed. He didn't ask my permission. And if I told him no, that would have been the last favor I said no to. "So what am I supposed to do?" I whispered. He looked tired, older than he had an hour before. "Survive," he said, "and decide what kind of survivor you're going to be." The next few days felt strange, like the world had tilted just a little. Nothing big changed on the surface. The morning count was the same. The yard was the same. The noise, the shouting, the smell of bleach and sweat and cheap food, everything looked normal. But my brain wouldn't stop replaying the notebook, my name on the last page, the empty space beside it. At breakfast, I saw Officer Harris laughing with another guard, slapping backs, talking about a baseball game. At lunch, I saw Officer Jackson checking his phone in the break room. On a sheet of paper in my locker, I wrote down their names and circled them. Harris, Jackson, the same names I had seen in the notebook with numbers next to them. I started watching. Harris always seemed to be on duty when certain inmates moved from one block to another. Twice, I saw him nod at a man walking past, and that man suddenly had no trouble getting through a crowded doorway. No shoves, no insults. People parted for him like water. Jackson, who pretended to be lazy, always wandered near the phones. He'd stand there, talking to nobody, while the same small group of inmates took turns making calls longer than the rules allowed. When I asked about it casually, another guard just shrugged. "Those guys know how to keep the peace," he said. "You want a quiet day? Let them do what they do." But the secret life behind that quiet day kept poking through. One afternoon, I caught a glimpse of a tiny black phone being passed from one book to another in the library. David saw my eyes lock on it. For half a second, his face tightened. Then he covered smoothly. "That law book is due tomorrow, Thompson," he said calmly, loud enough for me to hear. "Don't lose it." The phone vanished into a pocket. Thompson nodded, like this was just about a book. After the shift, I cornered David in the back office. "You're moving phones through my library," I said. "You know that's a huge security risk." David rubbed his eyes. "Phones are already inside, Officer Cole. You know that. At least this way, the people who matter know where they are." "What does that even mean?" "It means the wrong people don't get them," he said. "If you take one, 3 more will appear. But if the committee keeps track, they can control what's said. Who talks, who doesn't. That's not your job." I snapped. He gave me a long, sad look. "Neither is staying alive," he said. "But I try to manage that, too." I went home that night with a pounding headache. I turned off my phone, but my mind wouldn't turn off with it. I kept seeing the notebook, the names and numbers, the calmly written Officer Harris and Officer Jackson with little weekly amounts beside them, and then my own name blank. I felt like I was standing on the edge of a cliff, and every move I made might send me falling. I picked up my phone 3 times to call my sister, but I couldn't explain any of this to her. How do you tell someone, the people I'm supposed to guard might control my life more than my boss does? Instead, I opened my laptop and searched for a number I knew I shouldn't be looking for, the Office of the Inspector General, the state agency that investigated prisons. My finger hovered over the call button. I thought of Marcus saying, "Heroes become accidents." I thought of David saying, "People who stand in the middle of the road get run over from both sides." Then I thought of my name in that notebook, the blank space next to it, waiting to be filled in. I hit call. I didn't give my full name on the phone. I said I was an officer at Redwood State Prison. I said there were possible policy violations. I said I suspected unauthorized contact between staff and inmates and organized contraband networks. I tried to use the right words, the dry words, the ones that sounded normal instead of terrified. The man on the line listened quietly. When I finished, he asked a few short questions. "Do you have proof?" "Not yet," I said, "but I can get it." "Is anyone in immediate danger?" I thought of the word green light I had seen next to someone else's name, an inmate who had been shipped to another prison after a mysterious fight in the shower. "Not yet," I said again. All right, he said. You did the right thing by calling. If what you're saying is accurate, this is serious. Don't discuss this with your coworkers or with inmates. We'll open a file. You may be contacted. In the meantime, stay observant and stay safe. He hung up before I could change my mind. I stared at the phone in my hand for a long time. The next morning when I walked into Redwood State Prison, the building looked exactly the same, but I felt like every camera was pointed at me. I went home that night with a pounding headache. I turned off my phone, but my mind wouldn't turn off with it. I kept seeing the notebook, the names and numbers, the calmly written Officer Harris and Officer Jackson with little weekly amounts beside them, and then my own name blank. I felt like I was standing on the edge of a cliff, and every move I made might send me falling. I picked up my phone 3 times to call my sister, but I couldn't explain any of this to her. How do you tell someone, the people I'm supposed to guard might control my life more than my boss does? Instead, I opened my laptop and searched for a number I knew I shouldn't be looking for, the Office of the Inspector General, the state agency that investigated prisons. My finger hovered over the call button. I thought of Marcus saying, "Heroes become accidents." I thought of David saying, "People who stand in the middle of the road get run over from both sides." Then I thought of my name in that notebook, the blank space next to it, waiting to be filled in. I hit call. I didn't give my full name on the phone. I said I was an officer at Redwood State Prison. I said there were possible policy violations. I said I suspected unauthorized contact between staff and inmates and organized contraband networks. I tried to use the right words, the dry words, the ones that sounded normal instead of terrified. The man on the line listened quietly. When I finished, he asked a few short questions. "Do you have proof?" "Not yet," I said, "but I can get it." "Is anyone in immediate danger?" I thought of the word green light I had seen next to someone else's name, an inmate who had been shipped to another prison after a mysterious fight in the shower. "Not yet," I said again. "All right," he said. "You did the right thing by calling. If what you're saying is accurate, this is serious. Don't discuss this with your coworkers or with inmates. We'll open a file. You may be contacted. In the meantime, stay observant and stay safe." He hung up before I could change my mind. I stared at the phone in my hand for a long time. The next morning when I walked into Redwood State Prison, the building looked exactly the same, but I felt like every camera was pointed at me. The next night, the prison felt strange even before anything happened. It was hot, the air heavy and still. The fans in the halls rattled uselessly. Inmates were restless, pacing their cells, banging on doors, snapping at each other over small things. Arguments flared up and cooled down like tiny fires. On the radio, I heard more calls than usual. Officer needed in B Block day room. Medical to D Block. Sergeant to intake. We got a problem with a transfer. The whole building hummed with nervous energy. By the time third shift started, my shirt was sticking to my back with sweat. I walked to the library, my footsteps echoing down the dim hallway. The lights seemed a little darker than usual. At the end of the hall, I saw the glass panel of the library door, faintly glowing. Inside, the room was empty. No inmates, no David, just rows of books and quiet. "Lee!" I called softly. No answer. I stepped inside, heart beating fast. The door clicked shut behind me. For a crazy second, I thought maybe I had the wrong time. Maybe everything was fine. Maybe David was just late. Then I saw it. The back office door was slightly open, a thin line of light spilling out onto the floor. "David," I said again, my voice shaking. No reply. I walked slowly toward the office, every step loud in my ears. The library, usually full of whispers and a rustle of pages, was dead silent. I reached the office door and pushed it open. David was inside. He was on the floor on his side, his glasses crooked, his shirt stained dark around his middle. Papers were scattered around him like fallen leaves. The metal cabinet stood open, one shelf completely empty. For a second, my brain refused to understand what I was seeing. Then I saw the small, homemade knife on the floor near his hand. "David." I dropped to my knees. "David, can you hear me?" His eyes fluttered. His lips moved. I leaned close. "Notebook," he whispered. They moved it. I tried to. His body shook. A wet, rattling breath escaped his chest. "Who did this?" I choked out. "David, who did this?" His fingers twitched weakly, tracing a shaky shape on the floor. A letter, a number. I couldn't tell. Then his hand went still. "Officer down. Medical to the library. Now." I screamed into my radio. "Inmate bleeding, possible stabbing, now." The radio crackled alive with voices. "On our way, who's closest?" Locked down the block. An alarm began to blare overhead, a long, angry wail that shook the walls. Red lights flashed in the hallway outside. Somewhere distant, I heard cell doors slamming, heavy bolts sliding into place. I knelt there beside David, my hands sticky with his blood, my heart pounding so hard it hurt. My eyes landed on a single sheet of paper near the cabinet. It was torn from the notebook. There were names on it. Inmates, guards, numbers, and near the bottom, in the same neat handwriting as before, Officer Ethan Cole, status pending. But this time, someone had added 2 more words in fresh, dark ink. Green light. My stomach dropped. The siren screamed louder. Boots pounded down the hallway, getting closer. Shouts echoed off the concrete. I realized with a cold, clear fear I had never felt before that this wasn't just an attack on one inmate in a quiet office. This was the committee sending a message. The secret lives of the inmates weren't hidden anymore. They were coming for me. The library door burst open behind me as armed officers flooded the room and the prison roared into full lockdown. And in that chaos, with David's blood on my hands and green light written next to my name, I knew one thing for sure. The next moves in this game would be written in blood.